Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Hype RC. In today's video, we're going to be going over some upgrades that we did to our FMS K5 Blazer. Now, this rig works very well box stock, but I wanted to get a few mods on here and see if we can't get this thing to crawl just a little bit better. With the hard body, you get a very high center of gravity, so we're going to address that and a few other upgrades. So let's get over to the bench and check it out. Let's take a quick look at all the upgrades we're going to put on our K5 Blazer for the Stage 1 upgrades. First, we're going to put on this custom bumper that we got in the pre-order. That thing's really cool looking. I got to see what that looks like on there. Next, we're going to get the shocks that came from the factory. We're going to get these O-rings installed, and we're going to get those things oil-filled and dampened and see how well those perform. Next, we're going to get in our FastEddy bearing kit. And then on Amazon, I found this really neat set of suspension links and front steering links in black with a machined edge. And man, those are going to look super scale underneath this rig. That is going to be sweet. And then I am so excited I found these. This is an off-brand I found called MORLORDY. And they make an exact replica of the American Racing Billet Outlaw 2 wheels. These things are just perfect for the scale look I'm going for. Then we're going to go ahead and put around those the set of Proline Baja Pro X Mickey Thompson tires. Those are going to look very nice and get us plenty of grip on this rig. Then we're going to throw a little weight up front with some Injora front portal axle covers. These are 25 grams each. That'll be very nice. And then I've been eyeing these all aluminum chassis for the FCX24 for a while, but I really didn't want to put one on my Power Wagon. But I think to keep the scale look and get more weight down low on this rig to counter that body, I thought this would be perfect. I think it's going to look very nice. It's also got all the adjustability for the tops of the shocks, so you can really get this thing tuned in and running well. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these upgrades put on. Stick around and check it out. So I got all the upgrades installed on our K5 Blazer. Let's go ahead and take an up-close look at them. First, we'll talk about the clearance links. These went on just perfect. They will allow us not to get hung up and snagged up on the rocks. That gives us a ton more clearance on the bottom side of this. Next, we got everything switched over to this all-aluminum titanium chassis. It has a ton of shock mounting locations, so I'm super happy with the way this looks sitting underneath the K5 Blazer. Next, we got all of our Injora brass put on the bottom of this. That got all of the weight moved down low, so we're definitely sitting at a much lower center of gravity with all of that weight. Next, our MORLORDY American Racing Outlaw 2 style rims went on here. I did have to drill them out to get them to fit, but after that, they went on just perfect. The Proline MT Baja tires mounted up just perfect, so that is going to give us a ton more grip than those factory tires. We did get the custom bumper that we got with the pre-order put on. That is super tough looking on the front of this Blazer. I'm super happy with the way that has turned out. I got the FastEddy bearing kit dropped into this thing. It's going to help it run a lot smoother than those bushings. But let's talk about a couple of the free mods that we got on this. So we did rebuild these shocks with the O-rings. I got 20 weight oil in them, and I did cut 3 rotations off the top of the spring to help this sit a little bit lower, but it's a lot more cush than what it was without that. I think that's going to help this rig run a lot better. Then on the front of this, you have these screws that go into the C-casters, and when the front steering knuckles turn, they actually end up running into that. So if you move those screws around to the back, it actually allows you to get a better turning radius with this. And so that is a super easy free mod. And then the last one, and it's something I found out by accident, but the on-off switch actually comes on and off, and you can relocate it to wherever you want on your rig. Personally, I'm going to keep mine right up here on the front because I like to be able to reach right in there and be able to turn it on and off. But those 3 free mods right there are going to help your rig out a lot. So let's get this guy out on the rocks and see how well it does. All right, guys, let's talk about how this rig performed out there on the rocks. It did very, very well. As a matter of fact, it tackled the second half of my 10th scale course. The entire front half of that is under construction. I'm revamping the entire front end of the 10th scale course, but this thing beat the second half with flying colors. Extremely impressed because box stock, it was not going to do that. So let's go over the upgrades that I did on this rig and talk about the pros and cons of each. We're going to start off with the Amazon links. I cannot recommend these. The upper links would not fit in between the chassis rails. The lower links did fit. So if you can find a set of high clearance links that are of quality, I highly recommend them. It kept this from getting high centered and getting stuck and hung up on all those rocks. So a nice set of high clearance links will do your K5 Blazer a world of good. Next, let's talk about the Injora brass portal covers. Highly recommend those. It lowered the center of gravity this rig very well. It kept it planted, and as you can see, when it did the 10 scale course, it was just enough to keep this thing sitting on all fours on the incline and the decline. So highly recommend those. Next, let's talk about these MORLORDY billet rims. If you want to keep a scale look to your rig, I recommend these, but I did have to do work to get them to fit. I had to clear out the hole to get them to fit over the hub, and I did have to 3D print some longer, wider hexes to get them to stick out far enough to be able to fit. So if you're a guy that wants to keep the scale look and don't mind doing a little bit of work, then I can recommend them. But if you really don't want to do all that, then they're probably not for you. Next, let's talk about the Proline Mickey Thompson Baja tires. These things are amazing. Nobody does it like Proline when it comes to RC tires. Highly recommend them. Plus, they look super cool on this scale rig. Highly recommend those. Next, the all aluminum chassis, I think, did help lower the center of gravity. Plus, it just looks amazing sitting up underneath this rig. So I recommend that for anybody that's wanting to go with a scale kind of comp style for their K5 Blazer. Next, the bumper that came out of the pre-order is amazing from FMS. I highly recommend it. I thought that it might impede on rock crawling. Instead, it helped this front end slide up and over all the obstacles. So if you didn't get one with yours, and you can order it from FMS, I highly recommend that. It is really nice. The FastEddy bearings have this thing running smooth. I run those in my bashers, my crawlers, my drifters. Everything I've got has the FastEddy bearing kits. It just helps these rigs run so smooth, so I highly recommend those. Let's talk about the 2 free upgrades that we did on this rig. Now, getting those button head screws moved back from the front to the back on those hubs actually worked very well. It increases the turning radius a lot on this rig, so that is a nice free mod. And then getting the shocks redone on this, you can see that it is not a bouncing log wagon anymore, so I highly recommend that. I did cut 3 rotations of the springs off the top, and I used 20 weight oil. I used a little bit of green slime on the O-ring, and they are not leaking at all, so that is a great free upgrade for your rig. So all in all, this rig is running very well, and I highly recommend all of these upgrades except for those Amazon links. They work very well, but the upper link's not fitting. You don't want to pay for a kit and then only half of it works. So don't forget to support your local hobby shops. Bash, crawl, repeat. Hit that subscribe and like button for me so you can catch my next video. We'll see you next time.